One of the things that I find is telling about sense of place is we know it when we see it, we've felt it. But it's really hard to put inside of a beaker and measure, for example. But if you can take a second and close your eyes and think about where you're from. Think about what made your community special. Think about the places you went to. Think about the places that you celebrated being a community together. Where did the parade happen on the 4th of July? Where was the central hub where people got together to share ideas, to argue, to reconcile differences? Where are the places people went to have fun? Where were places that people took pictures in your community? Where did you go for your family pictures? Where did you take people when they came to visit your community? Or when you say you're from a place, I grew up wherever, what do you think people envision about that community? So in your community, what are people working to protect? What are things that you are heartbroken that have been lost? Hi, I'm Jake Powell. I'm an extension specialist at Utah State University.
Hi, I'm Dave Anderson. I'm a professional practice associate professor here in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning.
Today we're going to be talking about a sense of place and why that's important to our communities here in the state of Utah.
We're going to talk about where it came from, where it went, and what can we do to bring it back or strengthen and reestablish it. A lot of what we do is applied research. We're taking information that's gathered from a whole bunch of different fields and disciplines, engineering, sociologists, biologists, and a whole bunch of other ologists, and we're synthesizing that information in a way that addresses a problem that's unique to a community.
In the field of landscape architecture, we oftentimes use the idea of genus loci, which is a Latin term. And that really is an old term that was historically really important, that they knew that where they were in a place because it felt different. And for me, sense of place is an authentic representation that melds both history and what's happening in a community now in a way that people know where they are, not because there's a sign that tells them something is special or a community is special, but because they can feel it, they can sense it just by being there because of the built environment around them.
Here's a good example of sense of place. So this past spring break, I, along with another professor, we led a group of students to Lisbon, Portugal for a week. They had to have ways to get up and down these steep streets. And so most of the roads are cobbled streets, but the coloration of these materials lended itself to assembling them in unique patterns. A really neat thing that the folks in Lisbon have done is continued to use these materials. And so that longevity and consistency in using the same kind of material has really helped to kind of create a fabric that holds the place together, along with other things, of course. But if we were to take some really interesting paving patterns and lay them in the ground on the streets of Salt Lake City, it really wouldn't have any connection or make much sense to that city, because those materials aren't prevalent and there really wouldn't be a purpose for them. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about authenticity, and what makes a place special really comes from its roots in a lot of situations, and to adopt someone else's roots and history and try to apply them into your context is going to really fundamentally change the community and maybe not in ways you like. The built environment really is a reflection of what we value as a society, as a people, and so a sense of place is an innate response to what a community cares about, because what they built took a lot of resources, time, and energy and sacrifice, and it really is an implicit way to assess people's values.
Communities evolve where there are resources for them to exist. Wood or some kind of stone material, but the coloration of those materials is really important because they come from that particular place, and that's really identifiable when you start looking around at the community. It looks like it blends in and becomes part of that physical place.
Yeah, the red rock stone that's used in St. George is different than the granite that we see in downtown Salt Lake, which automatically helps us distinguish a city if we're in it. Here's Dr. Patrick Mason explaining about how early Mormon settlement patterns influenced our sense of place.
Yeah, I think the Mormon grid system and Mormon settlement patterns are really interesting to study because it gives us, whenever we study our history, it also opens up new possibilities for us today. We can be reminded of certain values that we once had that maybe we can reclaim and adapt for our own contemporary world. My name is Patrick Mason. I'm the Leonard J. Arrington Chair of Mormon History and Culture in the History and Religious Studies Department at Utah State University. Even driving up and down I-15, you can kind of see that there's a settlement or a small town or city, and then 15 or 20 miles there's another one, then 15 or 20 miles there's another one. They wanted settlements roughly a day's ride from one another. These were basically agrarian communities with kind of small town, kind of mercantile shops and things like that. But the idea is that everybody would come home at night. They would see each other. They'd be able to gather together for cultural events, for religious events. They'd socialize with one another, and then they'd go out to the farms during the day. People came and they developed, they built, and it wasn't like the church was enforcing, you must do it on a grid system. So then people would do it kind of on their own. So while this was a kind of an initial vision, by the late 19th century, this kind of Mormon ideal got overshadowed really by wanting greater economic development.
These original Mormon communities created was this underlying fabric of a community. And over time, that fabric has become frayed. As we patched in the same looking fabric, they're starting to look like the same fabric over and over again, even though there are some original threads.
You may ask, why is that important? Why do we care? Because it's all in the name of progress. People have great places to live and jobs and lots of cars and whatever. These identifiable, unique characteristics and attributes of a community are really, really important. And if they are continually eroded away and disregarded, ultimately we take less care of these places. They degrade, they go downhill, and then we kind of pick up and move to some other new shiny place and leave behind those places in kind of a bad situation.
Sense of place creates a sense of ownership and pride in an area. And when we care about the communities we come from and live in, we take better care of them. And we have this habit or this modern phenomenon of being very mobile. We move from community to community. There's not that same generation after generation living in the same community that helps build the social aspect of community. So the physical built environment of a community becomes the legacy that we as human beings inhabit. And we can, as we inhabit or inherit the built environment, it changes us. And we in turn can change the built environment. And I think it's important to recognize that mobility is dangerous in the sense that those who have the resources can be mobile and they can move to places that have a sense of place. And what they leave behind are those who don't have resources in communities that don't have a sense of place. And it could perpetuate a really dangerous cycle of leaving behind those who are most vulnerable in communities that facilitate the least quality of life.
McDonald's looks the same in every town because they just pop up a new one and there's an exact plan or set of plans for a new McDonald's. And unless a community is really, really determined to cause them to bend or make some adjustments or conciliations, they won't do it. They don't have to. And McDonald's taste, that's their trademark. They want to taste and be exactly the same in every single spot wherever they are around the world. It's easy to pick on McDonald's. We can pick on Walmart.
But I think that's an interesting idea, though, is if everything tastes the same, well, the joy of finding the mom and pop restaurant in the community or finding the hole in the wall restaurant that no one's ever been to, that's the spice of life. That's the exciting part of adventure, is finding the thing that isn't normal. And I think that can be said in food and fashion It's also can be said in communities and places. As soon as we make everything feel and taste the same, we innately start to look for places that are new, different, and have not given themselves up.
So when we try to help a community, we're going to go there and give it fresh eyes. And with our students, we'll look and say, okay, what are the really cool attributes of a particular community? Where are the features that help define it? And sometimes it's a physical feature like a stream or a river. Sometimes it has to do with the vegetation that's there. Based on experience, how can we kind of reinforce some of these things so that they are strengthened and supported and connected? That's a really, really important thing that we do.
So a lot of the role of landscape architects, designers, and planners is helping a community find their own vision. Our concern and what we've seen time and time again is if you don't have a vision for your community, someone else will create that vision for you. And a lot of times those are entities that don't have the same interests as the community might have for itself. For nearly 40 years, the Department of Landscape Architecture at Utah State has been helping communities find their vision and find their sense of place and try to retain that sense of place or build that sense of place. So we do that in a lot of different ways. We take students and we help them go into communities and work with communities.
When you're living in a community, it's hard to see your identity.
We get to go into these cities, meet with a bunch of people, and kind of explore really what makes that city unique and special. And that's kind of our goal as like budding landscape architects and city planners.
I'm Helen Lee.
And I'm Callie Clark, and we're both students here at the Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning program here at Utah State. In the charrette process, the sophomores are in charge of the site analysis of the project. So when we were sophomores, we were doing Layton City.
And we had a van full of students that we would just go and stop at all these sites, take notes, sketch. We got to talk to principals and vice principals of schools and other community leaders. So there's more things that you can do by showing up and saying, hi, we're students and we're doing some research.
Then the seniors dissect everything that the sophomores have discovered, and then they start planning. And that design proposal is book format, and we typically make a lot of posters and stuff to kind of like show our imagery.
A lot of suggestions from the charrettes have been implemented. In Kanab, when they did the Best Friends charrette, they actually took some of those suggestions, made a pet motel, which is now currently operating.
Which exists now.
Which is awesome. I mean, for students to have work that's actually built, even if they're not involved with the minute details after charrette, is really incredible. For people working in city government, the charrette process is a really great opportunity to really expand the ideas that are on the table and work towards the future of what that place can be.
In the spring of 2020, we worked with the community of Canab. It was a backdrop for Hollywood cinematography for the first half of the 20th century. Canab became the defining landscape of the West. When people watched television and movies, Canab told them what the West looked like. And so we started to work with this community, and what we heard from the community members and realized is this place that was the poster child for the West was feeling like it was losing some of that identity, and it was becoming victim to that idea of placelessness. We've worked with Canab for several years on a lot of different types of projects. And so we had a long established relationship with many of the community leaders there, many of the community members, and we're able to have some really hard conversations. They know a lot about what makes their community special. Our profession and our department here at the university can bring is an outside perspective of trained faculty, but also the outside perspective of young adults that are going to be the people that shape your community and desire a community in the future.
So we're not naive, and we understand these are very, very challenging things. I think one of the things that communities need to do, though, first is identify those things in their community that are special. It's not necessarily just old Main Street buildings. It could be, as we've said, it might be a stream, it might be an existing park, it might be a grove of trees. Then we need to figure out how to defend and take care of those things. Getting it written down and basically adopted as law is really, really important, so that when the big box store comes or the hotel comes, well, you can build a hotel here, but you need to do it in this and this and this, responding to those different criteria. And then enhancing the things that need to be strengthened.
Every development sidewalk community decision either enhances its unique sense of place or erodes it.
It's really important that these lay folks they're given a lot. They want to be helpful in the community, and they're usually not making any money doing it. Council people on different boards, and the planning commission, that they be trained to understand and to help identify what does make a community special, and they can work toward identifying, defending, and enhancing those things.
A lot of the fabric that made Kanab special remains in Kanab, and that's one reason it's a draw today as a gateway community. Authenticity, that fabric that makes Kanab special, is like everywhere else, it's under threat, and it's beginning to fray. And it's starting to fray one commercial development at a time, one new hotel, one big box store at a time. Some issues we worked on in Kanab, we worked on their gateways. How do people enter your community? How do they know that they've transitioned from somewhere else into your community? We looked at their natural systems, some things about their community that they maybe had been forgotten or underappreciated, and one of them was a creek that runs right through town that is one of the only perennial water sources between the Virgin River and the Paria River. Actually, not the Paria, the Colorado River and the Virgin River. This Kanab Creek is one of the only perennial water sources. And it was something that the community had grown around historically, but had really over time abandoned for growth on the outsides of town. So the other thing we looked at was the core, the downtown. What makes Kanab's downtown special? And one of the major challenges we identified that many communities deal with, they had a major state highway running right through their community. It's really bisecting this little downtown. So we looked at addressing how do we deal with this significant divide in the middle of their town? How do we look at different housing types, perhaps, that can allow retirees, young professionals, people moving back to this community that want to invest in this community? Where do they live? How do we make it affordable? And where do those houses go so that the sense of this place called Kanab can remain, this quintessential Western rural town?
Some of the challenges associated with suburban communities, bedroom communities along the Wasatch Front, is that they have all grown together, and they are newer communities usually as well, and they haven't kind of set of intent or objectives the goal of being sort of a unique place.
I think that's good. I mean, I think it's good to recognize that, Dave, that, well, two things. One is every community started with a sense of place. Their goals may have shifted over time, and unfortunately many communities along the Wasatch Front, their goal was to look like every other community. And they've effectively met that goal. And their goals in a lot of situations are changing to be unique now, and they're facing some significant challenges in going back and trying to create a sense of place.
We're trying to teach our students to be very engaged in communities, that they need to respond to the needs and interests of the future clients. These real-world experiences are invaluable for them, but it's mutually beneficial then, because we can go and work for a community and give our students that opportunity to work with them, but give the community some resources and tools that they can then use in the future. It might help them in seeking grant funding for something, or just to build community support for a particular idea. Again, to recognize what those assets are in their community, help defend those, and enhance and strengthen them in the future. Some things communities can do, are there buildings that can be saved? Can they be repurposed? Do we need to remove them? Let's find a use for them. Can we reduce the size of some of these enormous blocks in our communities? Can we create blocks that are more walkable, and spaces and communities that are more walkable and friendly to people on foot and on a bicycle rather than solely in an automobile. I think street trees are super important. Creating an urban forest is a vital part of any community. It provides important things like oxygen to your town, but it provides shade, but it also provides wayfinding and helps you kind of identify where you are.
So a lot of communities are interested in this topic, and rightly so. And I did a presentation a little while ago, and afterward I received an email from a cultural anthropologist in Los Angeles, and she said, she quoted a beautiful book, and I've not heard it said so poetically before, but she said, great places have two things in common. They have 1 foot in memory and 1 foot in prophecy. And I think for any of our communities to have a sense of place, they need to keep that in mind, that they need to keep 1 foot in memory. They need to respect and build off of what made them special once, and 1 foot in prophecy. They need to understand that they don't need to be frozen in time. They need a vision of what they want to be that is respecting what they were.